My name is Eleni Anagnastiadis from FDA's Office of External Affairs, and I will be serving as the moderator for today's stakeholder call that will focus on steps the FDA has taken, which are aimed at improving the quality, safety, and efficacy of sunscreens. This call is being recorded and will be posted at a later date. Unfortunately, Dr. Woodcock, FDA's acting commissioner, had a last-minute conflict and is not able to join us on the call today. Today, I am joined by Dr. Teresa Michel, Director of the Office of Non-Prescription Drug Products in the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, who will share information regarding steps that we have taken to improve sunscreens. Following Dr. Michel's presentation, we will open up the call for questions. Before we get started, please take a moment to ensure that you are muted when not speaking, and we ask that everyone turn their videos off unless they are speaking. Thank you for joining us today, and with that, I will turn the call over to Dr. Michel.
Thank you, Eleni, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'd like to begin with our most important message, which is, of course, sun safety. And I don't need to tell this group, but sun safety is important for everyone, regardless of your skin tone. Individuals can reduce risk from sun exposure with continued use of sun protection measures, including broad spectrum sunscreen of SPF 15 or higher, wearing protective clothing that adequately covers the arms, torso, and legs, wearing sunglasses and a hat that provides adequate shade to the whole head, and seeking shade whenever possible during periods of peak sunlight. With that being said, I'm very pleased to update you on our recent activities that are aimed at updating regulatory requirements for most sunscreen products in the United States. Now, this can better ensure that consumers have access to safe and effective preventative sun care options that reflect the latest science. When the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act, was passed in 2020, the FDA was in the middle of amending the sunscreen monograph through the previous rulemaking process, and we had issued a proposed rule for sunscreens in February of 2019. The CARES Act provided the FDA with transformative new authorities related to OTC drugs, including sunscreens. It also established a deemed final order for sunscreens, which, along with other requirements, sets the current requirements for over-the-counter sunscreen products marketed without an application. Last Friday, FDA posted the deemed final order for sunscreens, which essentially preserves the pre-CARES status quo marketing conditions for these sunscreens. Before the CARES Act was passed, sunscreens were marketed according to nearly identical terms that were described in an FDA enforcement discretion policy. For this reason, we believe that most sunscreens on the market are already in compliance with this order. In addition to creating the deemed final order, the CARES Act also required the FDA to issue a proposed order to amend and revise the deemed final order. Therefore, we also issued a proposed order that the agency is using as a vehicle to effectively transition its ongoing considerations of the appropriate requirements for over-the-counter sunscreens marketed without approved applications from the previous rulemaking process to this new order process. The provisions in the proposed order are therefore substantively the same as those described in FDA's 2019 proposed rule on sunscreens. With this proposed order, we're proposing new requirements to improve the quality, safety, and efficacy of sunscreens Americans use every day. This action is an important example of the FDA's ongoing efforts to ensure that sunscreens are safe and effective for regular lifelong use, and that they provide consumers with the protection that they need against sunburn, and for broad spectrum sunscreens with SPF values of at least 15, protection against skin cancer and early skin aging caused by the sun when used as directed with other sun protection measures. Now, FDA will consider comments on the proposed order submitted during a 45-day public comment period before issuing a revised final order. As part of the process, the agency will consider all timely comments submitted both in response to the February 2019 proposed rule and to the current proposed order. To enable us to review and address these comments as expeditiously as possible, we ask commenters not to resubmit comments that were already submitted in a timely fashion to the 2019 proposed rule. Let me say that one more time. The FDA asks commenters not to resubmit comments that were already submitted in a timely fashion to the 2019 proposed rule. The issuance of the proposed order is an important step in FDA's efforts to follow the latest science to ensure the safety and effectiveness of sunscreens. We see it as a key public health priority and our regulatory obligation to make sure that marketed sunscreen products offer protection from the sun's effects and that they deliver on those promises for consumers. So in closing, I want to thank all the stakeholders who provided critical input to this process, including consumer groups, industry, the medical community, and scientific experts who've helped inform our work thus far. People have contributed to this effort over many years, and I just want to thank them for their ongoing commitment to providing data to support sunscreen safety and effectiveness. The FDA will continue to work with industry and public health stakeholders to make sure that consumers have access to safe and effective sunscreens that are up to date with the latest science. I'd like to now turn this meeting back over to Elaine.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. At this time, we will begin the question and answer portion of the meeting. When asking a question, please turn on your camera, state your name and affiliation. If you prefer, you may also enter your questions into the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Also, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up so we can get to as many questions as possible. Does anybody have a question for Dr. Michelle?
This is Henry Lim.
Can you please state your affiliation?
I'm here as a dermatologist, but also I'm representing the American Academy of Dermatology. So Dr. Michelle, thank you very much. And thank you for the FDA for continually working on this very, very important topic for all of us for the skin health. I know I think our sort of aim is the same for everybody, to a consumer to be able to get state-of-the-art, safe and effective sunscreen. My question is that until such a time that the FDA issued the final rule, what would your position be for the sunscreen that is currently on the market? Because many of them containing ingredients that are considered to be not grace.
Dr. Michelle, I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Lim, for that question. So the current conditions for sunscreens are governed by the deemed final order as set out by the CARES Act. So what the CARES Act did was it established an order to basically set the state of play while we are getting to the final revised sunscreen order. And that put into place essentially what we had in our enforcement guidance that was previously out there. It included the 16 ingredients that were in the 1999 stayed final monograph, along with the conditions from the 2011 effectiveness and labeling rule.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Lim. Do we have any other questions? I see Sally Greenberg.
Yes, hello. Thank you all. And thanks so much to the FDA for taking the necessary steps to address the safety and effectiveness of sunscreens. 2 years ago, just short of 2 years ago, we wrote to the FDA with some complaints that we had gotten from consumers about a certain sunscreen. It turned out it created a rash in many, many users. And we sent that information with a bunch of Amazon comments. We had one person in particular who described the problem, and our concern was that the sunscreen continued to be marketed and sold. I can resend that letter out. I'm not sure we heard back. I'm hoping that Dr. Michelle, in your comments about the safety issues, I confess to not having read the draft, that some of these issues that have come up with sunscreen and consumer reactions, dermatological reactions to certain sunscreens are part of what's covered in this this proposed new regulation. So I just wanted to raise that issue. And anything else you have to say about the kind of complaints that you get in from either consumer groups or individual consumers would be very helpful for us in our future work on these kinds of issues.
So thank you, Ms. Greenberg. Could you just comment, where are you from? What group are you representing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm the director of the National Consumers League. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're in Washington, D.C. Sorry about that.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to take that question. It had a lot of pieces to it and try to dissect it a little bit here. So with regard to consumer complaints, first off, thank you for submitting those. And we do take very seriously any safety issues that are brought to our attention. Typically what we do is we address them directly with the manufacturers when we hear about issues, and we research them through our adverse event database. That adverse event database is available to the public. It's called FAIRS. So if anybody wants to look at the FAIRS data, you can. With regard to the proposed order, some of the data that we're requesting for certain ingredients includes data on photosensitivity and sensitivity reactions. So we also look at adverse event data, and that's all wrapped into the types of information that we're requesting for sunscreens.
Just to follow up, does that mean that what we've sent in previously is probably part of your database? You suggested that we not resend information in?
Well, it depends on where you sent it to. So if you sent it in response to the 2019 proposed rule, then those comments will be considered constructively submitted to this order as well, and you do not need to resubmit it. If you submitted it to our FAIRS database, then we have that. If you submitted it just in an email somewhere, it would not necessarily be considered as part of this, but we generally do, take all that into account.
Okay, we'll follow up with the team over there. Thank you so much.
May I ask a question?
Yes, I'll call on David Andrews, and then I will jump over. There is a call in the chat box. So after David, I'll get to Julie's question.
Yes, and apologize if my video is frozen. But I'm curious, with FDA's recent studies showing all of the active ingredients or all of the organic active ingredients readily absorbed through the skin, and industry's unwillingness really to answer the basic questions about the safety of these ingredients by doing additional toxicity testing. At what point will the FDA come out and say that we've waited long enough and actually revoke the grassy status for these ingredients, or move forward in the absence of any additional toxicity data?
So thank you for that question. And could you also just state where you're from, what group?
Sorry, this is David Andrews from Environmental Working Group.
Thank you. All right, so a couple of thoughts on the active ingredients and where we stand. So as I'm sure you probably know, in our proposed order, we propose that there are 2 active ingredients that are generally recognized as safe and effective. And those, of course, include titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. We further proposed that there were 2 active ingredients, trolamine salicylate and PABA, that are not generally recognized as safe and effective because they have safety issues, which I can talk about if you want to hear, but probably have read that already. Then we proposed that there were 12 active ingredients for which we needed additional data to make a determination. And of course, we proposed this back in 2019 as well. And in response to that proposed rule, industry came forward and requested that FDA defer rulemaking from 8 of those ingredients while they are providing data. And those 8 ingredients for which a timely deferral was requested include homosalate, avobenzone, the 4 O's, octinoxate, octosalate, octocrylene, and oxybenzone, muratamate, and sulazole. So for those 8 active ingredients, if industry wants to continue working on them and they are unable to provide the data within the 45-day comment period, we would consider further deferrals if they are able to actively demonstrate that they are making progress on those studies. And that would be for a period of 1 year. At that point, we would reconsider and again determine whether good progress is being made towards those goals. So if at any time FDA determines that there is not progress that is likely to result in a positive grace determination, we would go ahead and move forward with our order process.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have a question from Julie Bain. Can different ingredients allow different final orders as research is completed, or does it all have to be completed before any final order can be done? And I see Julie just joined us by video. Maybe you can state your affiliation.
Right. I didn't write that very well. I was going quickly. I'm Julie Bain. I'm the Senior Director of Science and Education for the Skin Cancer Foundation, and public education is our concern here. And so, yeah, I think you kind of started to answer this question, but I'm referring to the 8 deferred ingredients, of course. And obviously, it's clear that no final order is going to be released within a year. But I'm just curious if there could be more than one final order if research is completed to certain satisfaction or not, or if it has to all be done in one big chunk.
Right. So that's a good question. I don't have a definitive answer to that. But what I can tell you is that while the CARES Act has not told us exactly when we have to issue a final order, it did tell us that any final order that we issue after this proposed order cannot take effect for 1 year after the proposed order. So that's what the CARES Act laid out, and we're currently navigating this space.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
If I may, can I ask another question? This is Henry Lim again.
It looks like you're up, since I don't see anybody else in the waiting to ask a question, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Michelle, I have another question regarding, aside from the 16 active ingredients, there is another another product that contains another set of products that contain capsule, which is approved through the NDA process. Would I assume that that particular active ingredient is excluded from the discussion of 16?
Yes. So the products that are approved via NDA, this order does not apply to them. They still have their new drug application. They can continue to be marketed. And that's governed by the rules under the NDA process. A capsule, as you I'm sure know, is one of the 8 active ingredients that was submitted under the previous time and extent application process for amending the monograph, and subsequently is following the process under the Sunscreen Innovation Act. So those ingredients are being considered separately under the Sunscreen Innovation Act, which will continue to govern their process.
Thank you. It looks like we have time for one last question. So Andrea, if you would state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, I'm Andrea Zangline. I'm a pediatric dermatologist. And I was just wondering, will there be specific wording that for sunscreens safer for younger children? Right now, it seems to be anything can call itself pediatric. Will there be labeling guidelines for younger kids?
Yes, thank you for that question. So with regard to pediatrics, the current labeling for sunscreens is that sunscreens may be marketed down to age 6 months. And we recommend that consumers ask their doctor before putting sunscreen on infants younger than 6 months of age. Now, with regard to the proposed order does specifically ask for pediatric data, particularly in cases where the sunscreen is substantively absorbed and there is a small safety margin. So we're still waiting for data on those. Right now, there's no difference between any of the ingredients with regard to pediatrics.
Thank you.
Before we conclude, Dr. Michelle, would you like to provide any closing remarks?
Thank you. So I just, again, like to thank everybody for getting together today. We really appreciate all of the stakeholder involvement in this process, and we look forward to a brand new monograph for sunscreens.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle for an excellent presentation and for all the wonderful questions that we received from our external stakeholders. This concludes today's stakeholder call. A recording of this call will be posted on the FDA's YouTube page at a later date. If you have any follow-up questions, please contact the FDA Stakeholder Engagement staff at fdastakeholderengagement@fda.hhs.gov. Thank you and have a wonderful day.